Szanowni Państwo,
Dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Warmly welcome. My name is Ignacy Morawski. I'm a deputy of head editor of Puls Biznesu. And today I wanted to ask extremely important question. Are we heading into the right direction in economic dimension of our society? Are we on the right path? Does the set of ideas that dominated public debate in economic sense is the right set? Whether new paradigms that appear, do they rule our image of social life? Are they a right set? I will have a great guest for this discussion, but before that I wanted to ask a Ministry of Finances, Mr. Andrzej Domański. Good afternoon. It is my big pleasure to be here in Łódź once again on Freedom Games. Łódź, a place of meetings, of different environments and different ideas, discussions held all the time in the spirit of a real dialogue and community. And today I think we really need that in Poland. A slogan of this year's games is the time of uncertainty. At the same time, in my hometown, in Krakow, right now is held literature festival, Konrad, Radical Hope. And I think that between these two slogans, uncertainty and hope, are going our fates, our discussion about economy and about paths that it should follow. I am absolutely sure that 2025 is a year exclusive from the perspective of Polish economy. Polish economy breaches certain symbolic boundaries. We are entering a group of 20 biggest economies in the world, taking over Switzerland. In 1999, our country took 35th place in economy size with nominal GDP not more than $67 billion. According to recent estimates of International Monetary Fund, our GDP will be bigger than $1 trillion. And by that, Poland is chasing Saudi Arabia and leaves Switzerland behind. And these numbers are an evidence, are a proof that 35 years of a consecutive work, reforms, and entrepreneurship give its result. Because we know exactly why Poland is where it is, not anywhere else. Why didn't we share the fate of so many other economies that in 1989 were released, were freed, yet they did not achieve such success as Poland? So that freedom obtained in 1989, throwing down these communist chains, led to a certain free market eruption. We built very strong institutions. We joined European Union, and I'm not only saying about funds, but I mean access to a common market. And in the end, we managed to build a strongly diversified economy. When we look on what happens on other countries of Middle or Eastern Europe, we see that our diversification, the fact that we don't have only one international champion, but we have many strong sectors of economy, maybe a dozen of them, that makes us more resilient to shocks, external shocks, related to also automotive sector, for example. And as you know, not 35, but 45 years ago, Lech Wałęsa promised to Poles a second Japan. And that's exactly what happens in 2025, according to IMF, Poland is taking over when it comes to GDP per capita. Will take over Japan. And as I've said, for me, for my generation, it's a huge achievement. And for my parents' generation, it's a miracle. But it's not a miracle. We know how it was achieved. But for Poland, we want much more. We know that these advantages on which we build the strength of our economy, they gradually deplete. And in the world of increasing geopolitical tensions, slowing down globalization, powerful pace of technological transformation, keeping this dynamic of the growth requires something else, something more, vision, bravery, new actors of economical growth. Why are we saying about new stage of development? Because we also speak about upcoming new golden decade of Polish economy. We talk about innovativeness, increase of productivity, transformation. Estimates of OECD say that in 2026, Polish economy will belong to most rapidly growing economies in Europe. IMF, in turn, estimates that until 2026, the pace of growth of Poland will be twice as high as EU average. These signs of economical activity, vividness, are visible. I will not mention all of them. Increase in production, detail sales. In the end, some growth in building and assembly sector and Eurozone improvements. It all makes us more positive about the nearest future. Ladies and gentlemen, public investment have to be an impulse, have to be a pulse, but private investments are an element of our growth. Public investment processes have to right now fulfill infrastructural function, but increase also the environment for Polish businesses, because government accepted that state strategy through central communication port, through energetic sector, railways have to generate maximum local effect. So we act and we include Polish companies. We do care that the most components possible were created in Poland. Technologies with Polish universities, Polish institute, research institutes and businesses. It's not only a matter of ambition, but what I am sure of economical sense. Value of public procurement market in 2024 exceeded 587 billion zlotys. 587, that's the amount we are fighting for. And this amount is a strong leverage that combines that if it is wisely used, it can stimulate hundreds, thousands of companies in the whole country. For me, it's extremely relevant. So that here in Łódź, in Freedom Games, free market ideas are in very heart of thinking, to be stated very clearly. We want to support private sector in Poland. We want to support private sector companies in Poland. We know that we have a lot of place for such a growth. Ignacy Morawski is a co-creator of a report about new model of economical development of Poland. And preparing to this meeting today, I wrote down two numbers I think relevant from the perspective of where Polish economy can move if we successfully bring alive this Polish economic sector. 30% of Polish private businesses have only 30% of a capital of enterprises capital of Poland. That shows how big space is still here available to increase the meaning of Polish private sector. And why do we want that? Because efficiency of businesses in the private sector is 3 times higher than of businesses state-owned working in the same sectors of economy. Briefly speaking, by supporting private sector, we have a certain leverage. We can obtain much more for Polish economy, and at the same time we know that to make it happen, we as a state, as a government, we need to create conditions so that investments in Poland were more available, so that businesses in Poland have more available capital. So I'm glad that President Midera will take part in this panel, a president of one of the biggest banks in Poland. We, from our side, create a special funds that, together with a private capital, can be invested in most advanced sectors of Polish economy. Together with PFR, we opened recently Deep Tech Fund with a budget at the beginning reaching 600 million zlotys. We support, of course, capital market. In this panel, also, Mr. Prime Minister Belka will take part, who is associated with tax for capital income. As you know, we start with a project of personal investment accounts, thanks to which up to 100,000 zlotys of investment will be fully released from any kind of tax. We also prepare a program, innovate.pl, trillions of zlotys, again, public sector together with private sector, so to receive the right leverage and to invest in most advanced sectors of Polish economy, to have them more. I would like to also emphasize here during Freedom Games that there is no sustainable constant growth without economic freedom. There is no innovation without trust to businessmen, to businesses. For me, this huge effort of a government in deregulation dimension is an effort to increase freedom. And this year we started the largest, I think, for the last 30 years, deregulation process of Polish economy. Due to the cooperation with business and social organizations, we accepted already 150 very specific legislation changes that will make business in Poland simply easier. And deregulation for us is not only a slogan. We know that it may have a very specific translation into the macroeconomic data. According to OECD, the improvement of the regulation's efficiency can increase the private investment even 1 percentage point of GDP a year. For me, as a Minister of Finances who fights for these investments, for these indicators of investments, 1 percentage point is a lot. We cannot, however, close looking at this uncertainty that follows us in explicitly higher level than during last 3 years. A threat from the East is, in our opinion, a threat real. That's why nowadays Poland should not separate development from safety. That's why we allocate 5% of our GDP for safety, for security, for defense. That's a budget that will be included in the next year's budget. That's why we increase technological capacities, and we know that investments in defense sector have the biggest potential to build technological change.
With regards directly to the topic of the upcoming panel, for us, for our government, repolonization of economy means creating space for Polish companies, also conditions and financial conditions to participate in this huge investment process that is ongoing in Poland. We do want to support companies from private sectors. I've quoted the statistics that show clearly that the space for private sector in Poland is vast. And at the same time, due to a higher efficacy of the private sector, we can gain more for Polish economy. Thank you very much. Minister, thank you very much that you managed to arrive to us from the convention in Warsaw. Minister Andrzej Domański said we are entering a new stage of the development of Polish economy. Is it so? What it's going to look like? Is it a golden decade? Let me ask my renowned guests, those who created and still creating the Polish economy and financial system. Professor Marek Belka, former Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, the President of the National Bank of Poland, Szymon Midera, the Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the PKO BP, the biggest Polish bank, and Paweł Wojciechowski, former Minister of Finance, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, the President of the Polish Agency for Investments and Trade. Gentlemen, a quick question regarding the thesis put forward by Minister Domański. Are we entering a new stage? Is it any different from what we have had so far? Is it going to be a golden decade? A stronger name for this period was presented by Prime Minister Tusk, who said the era of naive globalization is over. The era of economic nationalism is beginning. Many were stupefied by that. Is it true? Is it good for us? The nearest decade would be a difficult one, first of all. Demography is down. Geopolitics is twisted. These are not easy times ahead of us. But is the time of naive globalization over, naive economic liberalism? Yes, though I have an ambivalent attitude to it. I remember when we started a discussion in Poland on repolonizing of banks or repolonizing of the banking sector. Well, I need to say that after a number of years with the National Bank of Poland, a period of working for the International Monetary Fund, that idea did not surprise me. I was pretty positive about it due to one reason, namely, when the global financial crisis started in 2008, foreign banks held their breath, not just breath, they held the crediting of Polish economy. At that moment, a window of capacities opened for Polish banks, banks managed from Warsaw, controlled from Warsaw, also for the new bank named Alior Bank. And it wasn't supposed to work. In the heart of this tornado, it started to work. Then I understood repolonizing the banking sector is not something stupid. But as usual in Poland, we screwed it up, because instead of repolonization, we had renationalization. I believe repolonization is a situation where decisions, especially those regarding risks, are made in Poland. amongst the board of directors of banks located in Poland. That is, people who are familiar with the situation on the ground. While nationalization, especially in its Polish edition, is treating state assets or state asset dominated by the state as the quasi-private property. Sometimes we hear news that Chancellor of Germany found the head of Deutsche Bank, persuading them to take some actions against German automotive companies. I do not think, though, that the bank's president should be into hiring a brother-in-law as a driver in a service department. So we do not have this culture of corporate operating. We do not know how to use the corporate ordeal in companies dominated by the state, which the French, for instance, can do. And we still cannot learn it. Let's have a look at what's happening today in the state-owned companies. There are no such scandalous situations as we had before, but instability of staff is depressing. Why do we need to change the CEOs, the deputies, members of the board, members of the supervisory board so frequently? It's against the best interest of the company, which means against the interest of the state and society. We still don't know how to do it, and we have no chance to learn. So the question comes to Mr. Midera, is it so? Can't we do repolonization? Don't we have a good corporate ordeal to allow for the repolonization as they do in different countries, or to manage the national assets as they do elsewhere? What repolonization means for you? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. When we speak about the same thing, meaning the positive economic patriotism, I'm for it, because I believe we should put our second leg down. You can't be standing on one leg all the time. The first leg that allowed us for good opening of our economy in the past 30 years is rooted directly in foreign investments, low labor cost, low value of the Polish zloty, and the opening of the EU market to our producers and distributors. And we mustn't spoil it. So we still need to care for the investments from foreign companies. We need to do everything that our Polish companies move inside the supply chains and take from major investors know-how, the technology, individualized solutions, while the other leg that we should put firmly on the ground is the leg of growth, investment, and foreign expansion of Polish companies. And we should do it based on strengthening private companies. I look at it in a simple way. The strategic goal should be 100 or 1,000 Polish companies that need support and push them to tier one in the supply chain. Private Polish companies. Because in the structure of top Polish companies, we have too many of those with the share of the state treasury. It's different than the European standards. 80% of top Polish companies have state share. Within the second leg and looking on how to change the trajectory of economic growth, we must strengthen Polish private companies. You need to know that in Poland we have too many small companies, too few medium-sized companies. Our economy in 95% is micro companies that hire up to 9 people. Of course, there are assets to that. We've gone through all the economic crisis, safely. These companies could dump the shock. But when we speak about the second wave of growth, it should focus on innovations, technology, capital, increasing productivity, using state-of-the-art technologies. Micro companies will not do it. They don't have capital strong enough. They don't have the know-how. They cannot take financing. So the goal of repolonization, well understood, economic patriotism is a must-have. We can't be naive. We need to have the support for thousands of Polish private companies so that they are ready for global competition. Let me remind you some statistics. 10 top companies in Poland do not include a single private company. In top 20 companies, there is one private company. And that's the one that inhabitants of one district in Warsaw didn't want their store in their vicinity. Should we now think about economy and the development of our country as a new stage where we opt for Polish capital, Polish company, and is this differentiation, Polish versus foreign companies, necessary? Is it a golden age ahead of us or a difficult decade? Well, certainly it will be difficult. Whether it's going to be golden, we will see. It depends on politics, but it doesn't go deep enough to state treasury companies. When we speak about Polonization or repolonization, economic patriotism, it needs good definition so that everybody in every ministry or company knows what it's all about. There are never-ending discussions. What is the term? Is it like taking control over companies like PKO, SA, or PZU, which made sense. It only makes sense in some sense. Networks or grids, energy, military industry, but it doesn't make sense in any other sectors, like consumption, where only competition should rule. Sometimes we associate it with another discussion on champions. We need to have Polish champions. The point is whether the champions has KPIs good enough to take care of what Mr. President has just said, so that the value chain includes the Polish content, the Polish added value. The point is we can't run away from globalization, but if we look at forming added value, profit, payroll, it's always U-shaped. Initially, there is innovation, it's very high. Then there is the assembly, very low. That was our dependent development. And then there is the sales, and that's high again. We would like to move in the value chain higher, but not just higher, but also that the capital keeps working and is reinvested in innovations. Without innovations, without the Polish intellectual property, the concept of taking over the added value, we will not improve our performance. If we don't do it, we will go a wrong way. Sooner or later, as we see from the military industry, it's short of national added value. Now, the Polish armament group, out of 13 billion revenue, 33% of Polish companies. It's easier to buy components. The Chinese are successful in selling e-vehicles because they control the whole value chain, from buying rare earth metals up to sales. So regardless of subsidies or labor costs, they always have the advantage. They vertically control the value chain. If we have large state-owned companies, your KPIs should look not only to push out other companies, but also to cooperate.
Within this cooperation, technological and productional, to add this added value to form Polish capital. Recently, there is a strong discussion about, is it good that in Poland we sell to external investors, big IT companies? A big portion of these businesses get into hands of external investors. It's a matter not only about defense sector, but other sectors as well. Paweł, do you have any ideas about IT sector and what about others? We have certain potential for developing internal added value. Others would say efficiency is needed, technological transfer, that's what we need. Without IT, we can't change the world. Thinking that every small business would be a huge potentate and will conquer the world, and scalability of this business is a utopia. As Nobel Prize award receivers recently said, it's about not thinking about capital, but how this capital works in a most efficient and lasting way for the economy. So in order to have that, we need all the supporting instruments, like external expansion and some other fantastic projects. But allocation of capital should take place in such a way so that this capital worked for the business, so that business can develop, no matter whether it is a private or state-owned capital. But in this segment, well, discussion is about something different, mainly whether the big tech giants should be taxed in Poland. It's that first pillar, OECD, because here incomes are generated in Poland. Income is generated in Poland. The discussion about taxation on digital tax should have first place in Poland before they are finalized in EU Commission and OECD. Let's remember about this first pillar is not yet implemented. Second one is. So this shifting already takes place. We need to also think about to balance a streamline of tax income, because in this kind of a structural increasing debt, a structural debt, because we have a deficit, we come to a certain level in 2029. We need to find a way to activate fiscal indicators. They will create added values if they are activated. I have an impression that you share one view, that repolonization, yes, it would be good to have a strong national capital, but not in a conditions of renationalization, but through stimulating the development of Polish private businesses. The question is how to do it. It seems like government has an idea. We have a strong public sector that generates huge public tenders, procurement. We create market. On this market, we create market. Big state-owned Polish, or not state-owned, but big Polish businesses. Is it possible? Can that be done without harm for foreign investors? Can we repeat a huge-scale success of PESA or NEVAC, who manufacture public infrastructure? They grew on such procurements. So, being ahead of the biggest Polish bank, is that possible? Or is it happening already? It has to happen. And it happens? Yes, of course it happens. We are already in a very advanced process of the biggest waves of investment in Poland for many years. There's an energetic transformation, is defense sector, and those are large infrastructural programs. Those are trillions of zlotys. We all know that next year in the budget we have 200 billions for defense, but in a perspective of next year, it will be much more than 1 trillion zlotys. So following this path, 60% of this money, as for today, go outside from Poland. So we import technologies, defense technology, in 60% of cases. My thesis is a construction of tanks in Poland can stimulate the growth of economy. And we have economists from around the world who proved in theory and in practice it should work as a multiplier. Every 1 zloty invested in defense should generate a revenue in the form of economic growth. Another example, we have a huge wave related to energy transformation. On Baltic, basically all the surface of Baltic, 30 kilometers from the coastline, is divided on sectors. We are after the first stage of offshore investment, and there will be built wind generators, huge ones, 100-something meters. As for today, our local tech is very few. We can plug in a cable on a coast. Right now, we need a smart industrial policy that can make a map of all the needs, can make a list of all the companies that can access this chain of supply as high as possible, and consciously will develop these businesses who have to be a motor of development for next decades, because we will not receive this much money for next decades from EU. We, as a biggest Polish bank, of course, we are open, and we invite all the companies from all the segments to our bank to receive financing. We have a huge capital resources. We want to give 100 billions of credits. We grow very quickly in this corporate sector, around 20-30%. It is a details customers. It's a real estate market, consumption credits. But we try to find companies that have a huge potential to get into the chain of supply. I will give an example of the Yacht Group that works with Polish wind generator. We see potential of that company. They will produce first couple of dozens of first Polish windmills, wind generators. So due to that number of people who would like to use Polish wind generation, it's more accessible. It's not only a price difference, but it's a framework that will give a clear conditions of receiving financing if certain requirements are followed. It's not so difficult. It can be done, but you need to do that in an aware way so that millions would work for Polish economy for next years. So you as a bank giving a credit, do you look if that is a Polish business or not? It doesn't work like that. It's more about active mapping of companies that are capable to increase in these investment waves. We do not discriminate by the origin of the capital. Of course, we start this process of defining the policy, which goal is to support Polish businesses, separating them, finding them. Because we strongly believe that we need to base somewhere this trajectory of growth for next years, and this should be Polish businesses, most innovative ones, the ones that survived for the last 30 years, managed to develop, went through different ups and downs, have know-how, determination, the ones owners of which work hard and managers work hard. We started a bit later, so we still have a bit, like 20 minutes. We will still have time for discussion, but maybe audience would like to have some questions. Please think about it. What questions can you have for our panelists? Professor, you have a huge experience of in Poland and abroad, and you worked in IMF as well. They say like that: if everyone around the world will think our local content, our business, then in the end, as a world, we will have a worse result. Exactly. On one hand, we are right that we are standing in front of huge waves of modernization investments, but on the other hand, we know the relation of investment to GDP is dropping or is on a very shamefully low level. It turns out that a public sector, no matter how important, is a certain margin for investment activities. Investment activities should be thriving in these private companies, which are not listed in the first 20. Also, Szymon Midera said, at least in this defense industry, the participation of Polish technology is very limited, is marginal. That's why a smart policy, smart industrial policy, is not a policy of Polonization, but internationalization of Polish business. So, briefly speaking, it's supporting alliances of Polish businesses with foreign businesses. And first of all, European ones. Because foreign capital it's not buying us off. The portion of foreign capital, this resource for foreign investments in GDP in Poland is not high, is smaller than with other countries that we like to benchmark ourselves, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia. It is a capital that brings to Poland modernity in a wide understanding and higher salaries, and takes away from this country more or less 5% a year, so less than we pay right now for financing public debt abroad. By the way, one of the positive aspects of Polish situation in public finances is that our dependency from international public debt financing is not high, as for now, and let's stick to that. It's about us in Poland to be able to finance this public debt. Like in the past, Italians did that, or how Japanese do that now. They have extremely high public debt, but somehow they are quite far from the bankruptcy perspective. So a smart industrial policy, that doesn't mean ineffective, usually ineffective, promotion by force of Polish businesses, but promoting alliances between Polish businesses with leaders of the industry of Western world. European economy, first of all. It is a road in the direction of it's a way that can bring us more gold during this upcoming decade. So European level rather than local one. Do I get you right? Yes, just look at the map. And what? Do we have border with Korea or US, or we have borders with Europe? Because someone would say Germans promote their own, French promote their own, and we all believe in European playground. Germans have 4 times bigger economy than ours. France has 3 times bigger economy than ours. So let's face it. Those are our partners. And those are partners who are stronger today. But the advantage of these countries over Poland is getting smaller. And let's not be too happy about the fact that Germany falls into long-term structural crisis, because this is one of the waves on which we can swim or not.
Mr. President, how about financing, loans, development of companies in Poland? When you look at the ratio of investments to GDP, as Professor said, the relation is pretty low. We speak a lot about investing in Poland, but we don't have so many investment projects as in other European countries. Is it so? Well, some people claim it is not. It's a matter of accounting, like small companies in Poland do not classify some expenditure as investment. Perhaps it is so. Polish entrepreneurs distrust banks. Is it that? Yes, there is something like that, especially among small companies. But I would like to stir it a bit, get rid of this thesis of low level of investment, 16-17%. And now that's based on analysis of macroeconomic analysis department in Poland, best assessed source in Poland. If we include that the level of investing assets has been growing slower than consumption, we can see that the investment level is about 23%. So it's adequate to the high economic growth. And they say it can't be any different. That what numbers say, that what experience and intuition of macroeconomists says. If the investment level was too low, we wouldn't be the economic growth champion. And we've been so for the past 30 years. And we wouldn't have the perspective for the few years to come. In Europe, without this, well, perhaps the small Malta has a similar growth, or Ireland, but they have different accounting, especially amongst major corporations from the US located there. So we cannot push through with this. I will keep repeating, the investment level is adequate to the level of economic growth. So it's not bad. No, these are wrong conclusions, and you know it's. The point is not to break. You need to scale. You need to change the structure of investments into more capital demanding investments that build innovations, that use state-of-the-art technology, that improve performance, competitiveness of companies. Now, back to the question of this financing inclination. Well, it all depends on the segment of our customers. This Polish specifics, 97% are micro companies. Indeed, they do not show high interest in bank financing. They do not have capacity for that. They do not have asset for security. They do not have options to build a good business plan. So they rely on their own resources. Though we are open, we are ready for the demand, we are waiting for it. And huge corporations, the ones that hire more than 1,000 people, get financing abroad, and we can see that. That is why the financing level against the GDP in Poland is very low. We are at the end of the EU average. What I've just heard from Mr. Midera is the most optimistic news I've heard for quite a long time about Polish economy, if it's true. Investment rate, well, that may be interesting, There has been fierce discussion why the share of investment in GDP is going down. Mateusz Morawiecki once said we will reach 25%. It went down to 16%. What Mr. Midera says, 16% is a statistical twist. It's not really true. If you calculate deflators, changes in prices, that we will reach 23%. So perhaps Mateusz Morawiecki has reached his goal. Doctor, you wanted to comment. Ask me something. I'm referring to the question about investing and repolonization. On the one hand, we have this idea, let's build a huge market, map companies that are Polish, support them. On the other hand, we have a warning. If we overdo it, we create protectionism that will decrease efficiency and will stop growing. I believe you are in the second group. No, you won't put me into any group. No. Frankly speaking, it's pretty easy. Either it's about control. Control is to increase resilience, like the banking sector, telecom, critical infrastructure, and so on and so forth. This is something different. For that, we have tools, proper tools. Decisions are made in the country that needs to ensure resilience. It's security of different sort. Something different is the issue of attitude to Polish chaebols. That is growth of the companies that are huge and want to be even larger, and sometimes push the smaller ones into a margin, grow out, instead of, as Mr. Midera said, instead of creating a structure to build value. They should be responsible for that, even if they, in their KPIs for management, we had 37% of public procurement. We controlled the military industry fully, and the large company gets an order, buys components. When Koreans built their, or Koreans or Turkish, when the Turkishized economy, they bought a tank from Hyundai, Altai tank, and said in 5 years' time we will transfer their know-how to Turkish companies, and they own it. They have the added value in the armament industry, and they have 70%, not 20% like Poland. So we have all the toys in our hands, so let's play them in such a way as the Swedes or French did. They simply have the indicators, the national added value for huge chaebols, strategic companies, and they say, here we go, like Swedes, the national contribution for the society. And they say, you can calculate the national added value, profits from domestic companies, and you are supposed to present taxes you pay. And these two components constitute a part of industrial policy, not that just we are using slogans, Polonization, repolonization, patriotism. No, we need to find a way to form policies based on examples that work, policies that have been tested, like by the Nobel winner economists, and in a way that is implementable, so that we do not have this uncertainty. Who said it? What does it mean? I worked amongst different ministries. Everybody speaks differently about repolonization. Everybody has another concept. We have some sectors where we get public orders, and that helps. We have sectors where there is a different market structure, so you need to do it smarter. But you can't avoid a situation that we need to abandon this dependent growth, only financed by foreign investment, build the capital but run policy in terms of supply, not just demand. As you said, there is money, there is the EU resources, the safe instrument. Money is there. The point is to do it efficiently, and that the capital is created in Poland so that it grows, the profits are reinvested, and we have scalable businesses. There is this added value in export. It's dominating a company with a foreign capital, but it would be good if it dominates in companies with Polish capital. Then we will have some more of control, and we will have more of added value, which means profits and salaries that go up. And that is how we can be growing on that basis, creating productivity in the economy and building innovation-based economy. We still have a couple of minutes. Are there any questions? One here, a second over there, and one more here. 3 questions to go. It works. Good afternoon, Piotr Sumlewicz. I'm a union activist, but I'm a fan of international corporations. For over 10 years, the statistics Poland do not provide. I'm a great fan of foreign corporations. I'm a union activist. Foreign corporations pay better than Polish firms, by 50% better, and I would support Mr. Belka and even go a bit further. There is this dispute about Polish railway, and it would be worth to travel 350 or 500 kilometers per hour if we should ally with Siemens. Zandberg wants a drug factory. In Poland, we can produce vitamin C. It's better to make an agreement with EU partners and make a drug factory, making agreement on patents, manufacturing lines. So I believe we should not only turn Polish companies European, but have shares with European entities like Airbus. We are not a part of Airbus, and there are more companies like that. So it's worth joining the European economic circulation. So it's more of a comment rather than a question. Ryszard Pikuły, an entrepreneur from Łódź. I would like to thank Mr. President for referring twice to 5 million one-person businesses in Poland, micro-entrepreneurs. When we join tenders, we compete. We do not collaborate, and then foreign corporations win the tenders because they can finance the purchase of materials produced and wait 60 days in the public tender for payment. So they can afford it. We can't. My question is, perhaps we should consider whether banks or the Polish government can somehow encourage one-person businesses to unify, to link into major companies. I know there are different forms of companies, but perhaps do something in the mentality, the mindset of Polish entrepreneurs so that we stop fighting and competing, but rather group. And then we will be larger. We know that Żabka store, it didn't build it all by its own. It first linked those existing, then it started working on the franchise. These go together very well. There is one more question. Can I get 3 more minutes? No. 2? No. 15 seconds for a question and answer. My question is to Mr. President. Were young people like myself who aspire to be a large entrepreneur like you, where can we look experience look for experience? Where can we find know-how without having a network of contacts? Where can we find such things? Where can we gain experience? Thank you. Two questions into one. Think more about the consumer and the quality of product, or support small Polish companies?
It's a question to Professor, Mr. President, and a question about building experience. So we have very limited time, therefore please be brief. A natural institution is, in such case, an economical self-government. But as usually in Poland, self-government, economic self-government, was organized our way. So we have, how much? 15 competitive centrals. But none of them plays more important role in a state policy. Let's look at our Western neighbors. They didn't play in economical liberalism, no, but for a very, very long time there are economical chambers that have institutional obligation to train. Mr. President, how to support small businessmen to win competition with bigger ones? Well, we do a lot for servicing entities of small businesses. Right now we are on the stage of obtaining a couple of dozens of thousands of such businesses a month. We look at it in a very simple way, looking at your need. The time is what matters, how quick the decision is made, and availability of the credit. Those are key factors. But you answered your own question, that the Accord builds a consortium, clusters, cooperation. That is the way for common winning. And we have examples like that on the market. In the situation when we can achieve agreement, we really achieve huge success between us, between big companies, also building these international agreements. And there was the question of a young person, what we can do. I wanted to give a floor to Paweł Wojciechowski, but you can continue the conversation after the panel. I agree with my colleagues. Cooperation, international cooperation, what Mr. Belka said, is crucial because products are global. If they are not global, if we don't think about scalability, we might as equally not start. Then internal, national cooperation. Another one, very important element, is a vertical organization. I have 3 young sons, all of them are engineers. Their problem was about selection, not about building contacts. They have enough of them, but substance. To shortly, we need to think that in the between war period, I don't know if you know how many prime minister heads of a government were engineers, 30%, 1/3, because now we are below few percent. It's a Pawlak and Buzek, not to mention economists. I believe that business needs engineers. I don't mean the ones from CERN. We need to finish. We need to think about that, not cooperation, teams, contacts. If there are good ideas, they will defend it on their own. Paweł Wojciechowski, Szymon Midera, Marek Belka. Huge round of applause. Thank you.
Polska stolica kultury. Jesteś na miejscu.
Do PKO Banku Polskiego przenosi się nowy klient.
Weź się, przenieść się jest easy. Czaruś, wytłumacz.
Otwierasz konto w PKO Banku Polskim i masz święty spokój. Przeniosą kasę i zlecenia stałe, a pracodawcę poinformują. Ogarniesz to przez internet. Bo to dobry bank jest.
Ej, widzę cię. Wolisz w oddziale? Dawaj do nas.
Otwórz konto w PKO Banku Polskim i dołącz do 12 milionów klientów. PKO, twój bank polski.
Mam plan na bezpieczną firmę. To plan firmowy z cybertarczą, która blokuje zagrożenia w sieci.
Cyberbezpieczeństwo? Masz od tego Orange. Teraz cybertarcza za 0 zł we wszystkich planach firmowych, a w wybranych smartfony 50% taniej. Orange tu jest.
W kinie doceniam prawdziwe emocje.
Na boisku pilnuję czystej gry.
W kuchni poszukuję autentycznych smaków.
Ale w internecie jest to trudniejsze.
W internecie wobec informacji też trzeba być sędzią. Dezinformacja jest jak bramka strzelona ze spalonego.
Więc jeśli coś we mnie wzbudza emocje, daję sobie czas. Może ktoś specjalnie chce mnie zagotować, bym uległa manipulacji.
Filtruj informacje.
Sprawdzaj ich źródła.
Nie masz pewności? Nie udostępniaj.
Postaw na czysty przekaz.
Do zgłoszeń? Gotowi? Start!
Ja zgłoszę bibliotekę!
Ja, pierwszy basen w gminie.
Ja amfiteatr gra w naszej orkiestry.
Wszystko w waszych rękach. Co powstanie dzięki wsparciu totalizatora sportowego w twojej okolicy? Zgłoś obiekt sportowy lub kulturalny. Wejdź na stronę gdygrasz.pl, bo gdy grasz, wszystko gra.